All right, welcome back. The Oilers and the Canucks play again tonight, this time in Vancouver, and the result ends up being a little bit different score-wise, and yet, I don't know. As a Canuck fan, this preseason didn't go very well. They end up 2-5. The Oilers end up 6-1. I know the preseason doesn't mean very much, but it feels like the Canucks, maybe they're a little bit off. So let's go through the notes on this game. Early on, we get 4-on-4 for the full 2 minutes. It didn't lead to any shots. In fact, the first 3 minutes of the game, there were no shots. So not a whole lot going on there. Miller's tipped shot was the first one of the game. Patan then fires one wide. Rathbone had a shot saved by Koskinen and Stick. Pettersson nearly buries one. Pettersson had a good game. Doesn't get on the sheet with a goal. He ends up with an assist by the end of the night, but a goal would have been nice, but it doesn't happen. Shots are 4-1 for the Canucks at 6 minutes. The Canucks press. They draw themselves a power play. Horvat tips one wide, but the Oilers' penalty kill, which is very good, kills that off. Shots are 8-1 now in favor of Vancouver. Duncan Keith, every time he touches the puck, Canucks fans boo. This goes back years. Many, many years. And I get the feeling it'll continue throughout the rest of his career as well. Canucks press with 9.5 minutes left. The shots at this point are 9-1 in favor of the Vancouver Canucks. Miller can't bury one. Podkolzin, some strong defense. And his puck pressure. And I think with Podkolzin, the net crashing is nice. I think ideally he ends up on the third line. Doesn't end up getting too much pressure early on. And again, I think defensively he's pretty sound. I think there's a lot there for the Canucks to work on. And then the offense, would work its way into the game later on. Oilers go to the power play. Foegele nearly buries one, and then Bouchard does. He blasts it. And so that power play marker goes in from Turris and Nugent-Hopkins at 16-20. Foegele doesn't get a point on it, but I think Foegele has kind of proven to Oiler fans that he's worth what they gave up to get him. Fogel's a very good player, gives him a little bit of a different look, and again, he screened on that goal. So a power play, which is lethal to start with, they can throw Foegele on the second unit, you would think, when everybody's in the lineup, which they weren't tonight. Remember, no Mike Smith, didn't make the trip. No McDavid, no Draisaitl, no Nurse, no Barrie, and so on, and so on, and so on. Whereas the Canucks, mostly a roster that should be their opening night roster, minus Bester and maybe a couple of others. So it's 1-0, and the Canucks need one, but they don't get it because Perlini gets one for Edmonton. He has 6 in the preseason. Perlini coming back from Europe and saying all the right things in a post-game interview as well. He scores from Sevier and Russell at 17:09. Sevier still on a tryout. We'll see if he gets released tomorrow. I hope he sticks around only because I am a fan of Colton Sevier. Shen did turn that over as well, and it felt like that was a big momentum swing in favor of the Oilers. Canucks try to answer. The Oilers had the last 6 shots in the game to this point. Horvat drives to the net. The Canucks end up with a power play with 17.8 seconds left. So that rolls over into the second period. In the second period, the Oilers finished that kill off relatively easily. The Canucks didn't test them a whole lot. Skinner had stepped in for Koskinen. I thought Skinner looked pretty good tonight. He robbed Myers. There was no screen on the shot, however. And then at this point, I noticed the Canucks seemed to be just a little bit off. Really smart defense by the Oilers. And just not the kind of game you want to see from Vancouver as they're getting fine-tuned for the regular season to start, right? And again, mostly regular roster. Cuckoo, I thought, looked decent out there for the Edmonton Oilers tonight. I've always thought Cuckoo's a good depth defenseman, so nice to see him playing well. Pearson had a rush chance. That was blocked out. And the Canucks press at 5.5 minutes. Connor Garland draws a power play. Connor Garland is good at drawing penalties on the other team. That's something I saw for years in Arizona. And I think it's something that if the Canucks power play is good, I think Canuck fans are going to be very appreciative of Garland for that. He's good offensively. He could score 30 goals. Absolutely could. However, I think the fact that he's able to make other teams take penalties is a very attractive feature. The problem is, for that to work, the Canucks need to score on the power play. And instead, there's a break. Ryan passes it to Yamamoto, and it's a shorthanded goal at 6:26. So they get a power play, and they go down 3-0. So the Oilers, again, minus a lot of their star players, are up 3-0 on the road. So if you're an Oiler fan, this is great, right? This is your secondary roster. Things look good. From a Canuck perspective, it has to be seen as alarming. Travis Green has to come out of this game concerned because in the event that the Canucks get off to a rough start, in the event that they just don't look good through the first, say, 3 or 4 weeks of the season, I honestly think that with Travis Green, even though he just signed a new contract, there has to be pressure on him to win, especially with the additions of OEL and Garland and with all the moves up front and everything. I think that there's a lot of pressure on him. So the power play was ineffective after that shorthanded goal. It expires. Demko makes a save on a Lagesson shot. The Oilers press at the halfway mark. Again, minus most of their stars, right? Chason couldn't bury one for the Canucks. Highmore was then denied. And then JT Miller takes his second penalty of the game. So the Oilers go to the power play. In this case, the Canucks killed that one off with no shots allowed. So after allowing the power play goal in the first, the penalty kill shows up in the second. Hyman has a wraparound that goes wide. Pettersson with a rush. He fires it wide. Canucks misfired after that. So they did get a little bit of pressure after that Pettersson rush. But they just couldn't. It just wasn't working. So the Oilers did manage to clear it out. The Oilers press with 3.5 minutes left. Shots pretty scarce in the final 5 minutes. And this is a preseason thing. I mentioned this before that you'll get more shots and opportunities early in the game than late. Once we flip that switch after tonight and we go to regular season games, this is going to be the opposite. Teams will be kind of quiet to start out, and then it gets crazy in the third period, right? So, Oilers press with 1.5 minutes left. Then with 6.3 seconds left, we get some chatting between the two teams, likely making plans for the opening night roster and playing against each other on Wednesday. Garland and Benson end up both going to the box because each exchanged a punch. So, and I thought that was interesting too. I hope Benson makes the Oilers, right? You have to think he's going to. He has to be put on waivers if they're going to send him to the minors. I don't know that he would necessarily clear. And would Vancouver put in a claim? Like after losing Gadjevich, do you take a shot at it? Anyways, we go into the third period with the Oilers up 3-0. They control the rest of that 4-on-4, which bled over from the end of the second period. Pettersson with a wrister that was stopped. Chason and Patan had chances that were saved. Chason was interviewed in between periods soon and talked about the frustration of needing to rely on a professional tryout during a contract. This is the third time that's happened to him. Garland tries to go through 3 players. That's a no. So this is something, too, that very often happens when players get frustrated. Well, I guess I got to do it myself. And that's something that, you would think a coach is going to pull him aside and go, all right, you can't be doing that. The Oilers had no shots in about 10 minutes of that game and only 13 overall. They would, though, start getting opportunities. And I honestly thought that with that 3-0 lead, they were doing a good job of playing kind of a trap style. Just, the shot, it was not like the Canucks were getting a lot of prime opportunities. The Oilers weren't, but it doesn't matter. They're up 3-0. You're trying to kill the rest of the clock, right? So, there was a press by the Oilers at 8.5 minutes. They finally get a shot. Bouchard had a slapper. Demko makes the save. The Oilers had a near miss away from 4-0 during this push. Highmore then had a shot the other way that was saved. Good game for Matthew Highmore. Again, decent on the fourth line for Vancouver. Pettersson had a one-timer that went wide, but then it's the fourth line that gets on the board. DiGiuseppe with his first goal as a Canuck. It's preseason, so it doesn't matter. But nice to see DiGiuseppe get on the board. I've supported DiGiuseppe through a couple of teams now. Highmore and Dowling with the assists at 13:44. That gets the Canucks on the board, makes the score 3-1. Tyler Benson with the giveaway that led to that goal. So again, we'll see where Benson ends up on the roster for the opening night. Canucks then drive, but a turnover gave the Oilers a 2-on-1. The Canucks were glad to see that fizzle out. Turris had a shot on a turnover that was saved, and with 3:42 left, the Canucks figure, what the heck, we'll pull the goalie. Pettersson had a shot that goes wide. That was the first shot attempt by the Canucks, and it was almost a minute into that 6-on-5. But then it's JT Miller from Hughes and Pettersson at 17:42 that makes it a one-goal game, and it was a nice tip on the shot by Miller. And so it gives them a chance. The Canucks pull the goalie again with 1:55 left. With 1:12 left, the Oilers go back to the box. So it's a 6-on-4. The Canucks immediately call a timeout, which is what you do in that situation. And it was some furious action late for fans who were in attendance who didn't leave before the Canucks got on the board, who weren't sitting there like, you know what, I saw this against Seattle, I'm not watching it again, let's go home. For fans who stuck around, they saw some exciting action in the end. Vancouver didn't tie it. They dropped to 2-5 to finish out the preseason. The Oilers go to 6-1. And again, we'll see whether or not any of this momentum carries over into the regular season. And we'll pretend we're surprised when it does for some teams and it doesn't for others. But yeah, this was a good road game by the Oilers. The Canucks have something to build on from the way the second half of the third period happened. And if you're Travis Green, you got to kind of get on him about, hey, you guys can't play down to your opposition. And you gotta keep that killer instinct going. And, now that we're going to regular season games, this is what we can't have. But, yeah, so was it the most exciting game? It's preseason, of course not. But after tonight, I review every single game. I watch every single game. And that'll be fun because next Saturday, there's 14 games on. So I'll be pretty busy on Saturday, and then there's only the one game on the Sunday after that. And then I'll do the power rankings after this review. And I won't be doing a power rankings next week. I always take that 1 week pause. And then after the second week, that's where I can, do a legit power rankings. But there you go. The Oilers win this one 3-2. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.